My name is Leela, and I am 32 years old and I live in the beautiful, but often gray city of Seattle, Washington, where the rain seems to whisper secrets against the window panes for half of the year. For a long time, I thought I was living the perfect version of the American dream, because I had a career I enjoyed, and a husband I thought was a good man, and a stunning craftsman-style home in a neighborhood where the trees turned bright orange and red every autumn. My husband Mark was a person everyone seemed to like, because he was charming and soft-spoken, and he always knew exactly what to say to make people feel comfortable around him. We had been married for 8 years, and I truly believed we were going to grow old together in that house with the big front porch, and the garden I spent every weekend tending to with my own two hands. Mark was a software developer, and he made good money, but I also worked as a marketing manager, and I put every single cent of my inheritance from my grandmother into the down payment for our home. That house was my sanctuary, and it was the place where I felt safe and happy until the day my entire world did not just crack, but completely shattered into a million jagged pieces. It started on a Tuesday afternoon when I came home early because I had a terrible migraine, and I found Mark's laptop open on the kitchen island, which was unusual, because he was usually very private about his work devices. What I saw on that screen is something that I will never be able to unsee, and it is something that still haunts my dreams in the darkest hours of the night, because it was the kind of evil you only read about in the news and think will never happen in your own home. My husband was not the man I thought he was because he was someone who harbored a disgusting and predatory interest in children, and the images and videos I found made me feel like I was going to be physically sick right there on the hardwood floors I had polished just the week before. I did not scream, and I did not cry right away, because I went into a state of total shock and survival mode, where I knew I had to get that evidence and get out of there before he came home from the grocery store. I managed to copy everything onto a thumb drive, and I called the police from my car while sitting in a parking lot 3 miles away with my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone. I thought that the justice system would work the way it does in the movies, and I thought that because I had proof he would be taken away and I would be protected, but I forgot one very important and very dangerous detail about Mark's family. Mark's father, Arthur, was a high-powered and incredibly wealthy defense attorney in the city who had spent 40 years building a network of judges and prosecutors and influential people who owed him favors. Arthur was a man who cared more about his family name and his reputation than he cared about the truth or the safety of innocent people, and he immediately stepped in to protect his monstrous son with every resource at his disposal. The legal battle that followed was the most grueling and soul-crushing experience of my entire life, because it felt like I was being punished for being the one who told the truth. Arthur hired a team of lawyers who made it their mission to destroy my credibility, and they painted me as a bitter and unstable woman who was making up lies to get a better deal in the divorce. Even though I had the evidence, Arthur used his connections to make sure the criminal investigation stalled, and he tied up the forensics in so much red tape that the police started to lose interest in the case. Then came the battle for the house, which was the only thing I had left that felt like it belonged to me because I had paid for so much of it myself. In the state of Washington, the laws regarding property can be complicated, and Arthur knew every single loophole and every single trick in the book to make sure I ended up with nothing. He argued that because Mark had been the primary breadwinner for several years, and because I had supposedly managed the finances poorly, that the house should go to Mark as part of the settlement. It did not matter that I showed them the bank records of my grandmother's money or the receipts for the renovations I had paid for, because Arthur had a way of twisting facts until they looked like lies. I sat in a courtroom for weeks watching this man, who I used to call Dad, lie through his teeth, while Mark sat there with a smug look on his face, because he knew his daddy was going to save him. The judge, who was a longtime friend of Arthur, eventually ruled that the house would stay with Mark, and I was given a measly 30 days to pack up my entire life and move out into a world that felt cold and indifferent. I moved into a tiny and cramped studio apartment in a loud part of the city, where the buses hissed outside my window all night, and I felt like I had lost everything, including my dignity. I was in debt for my own legal fees because I had tried so hard to fight them, and I had to start over at 32 years old with nothing but a few boxes of clothes and a heart full of rage. Mark stayed in our beautiful house, and he even had the audacity to post pictures on social media of himself sitting on our porch drinking expensive wine as if he had won a great victory, instead of escaping the consequences of his horrific actions. For months, I struggled to get out of bed, and I felt like the bad guys had won and that there was no such thing as karma in this world, because the man who should have been in prison was living in my dream home. However, I stayed quiet, and I worked hard at my job, and I began to pay off my debts $1 at a time while I kept an eye on what was happening with Mark and his father from a distance. I heard through the grapevine of mutual friends that Arthur had spent an absolute fortune to win that house for Mark, because he had to pay off private investigators and expert witnesses and other lawyers to keep the criminal charges at bay. Arthur was a proud man who hated losing more than anything else, and he had treated the divorce like a war that he had to win at any cost, even if it meant dipping into his own retirement funds and taking out loans. I started to realize that their victory was a hollow one, because they had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep a house that was probably worth only a fraction of what they had paid in legal fees. I also knew something about Mark that his father did not seem to realize, which was that Mark was a deeply lazy and destructive person who did not know how to take care of anything. When we were married, I was the one who scheduled the roof repairs, and the one who made sure the plumbing was working, and the one who kept the house clean and beautiful. Without me there to manage the household, and without me there to keep up appearances, Mark started to fall apart, and he became what I can only describe as gross and nasty. He stopped showering regularly, and he started drinking heavily, and he stopped caring about the condition of the house, because he felt like he was untouchable now that his father had saved him. I heard from a former neighbor that the beautiful lawn I had spent years cultivating had turned into a field of weeds, and that there were bags of trash piling up on the side of the house, because Mark couldn't be bothered to take them to the curb. Then the real magic started to happen, because the debt that Arthur had taken on to win the legal battle started to catch up with them in a big way. The legal fees were not just a one-time payment, because they had to keep paying people to keep the story out of the newspapers, and to keep the pressure off the district attorney's office. Arthur had overestimated his own wealth, and he had underestimated how much it costs to bury the truth forever, especially in a city like Seattle, where people love to gossip. One day I was sitting in my tiny apartment, eating a bowl of cereal when I decided to look up the property records for my old house just to see what was happening. To my absolute delight, I saw that a lien had been placed on the house because of unpaid debts, and that the property was being listed for sale because Mark and Arthur were broke. They had spent so much money fighting me and trying to take the house away from me that they literally could not afford to keep the lights on or pay the mortgage anymore. They were in so much debt that they were going to be lucky if they broke even after the sale of the house, because the market had shifted, and the house had fallen into such a state of disrepair thanks to Mark's nastiness. I found out that Mark had become so disgusting that he had actually ruined the interior of the house with his habits, and he had left behind piles of rotting food and stained carpets that would cost thousands of dollars to fix. The irony was so thick I could almost taste it, because they had fought so hard to take my sanctuary away from me, only to turn it into a dump that they were now forced to sell at a loss. Meanwhile, I had been working extra hours and living very frugally, and I had managed to pay off almost all of the debt that the divorce had caused me. I had also saved up a significant amount of money for a down payment on a new place, because I was determined to rebuild my life without any help from anyone else. The news got even better because as the house went on the market, the details of the divorce and the reasons behind it started to leak out into the legal community. Arthur's reputation, which he had spent his entire life trying to protect, began to crumble as people realized he had used his power to protect a predator. He started losing clients, and his partners at the law firm started to distance themselves from him because nobody wanted to be associated with a man who would go to such lengths to cover up for a person like Mark. Mark himself was now facing a mountain of debt, and he had no place to go because his father's bank accounts were empty, and he had no skills to speak of other than his computer work, which he was too drunk to do anymore. I watched from the sidelines as they were forced to sell the house to a developer who planned to tear it down and build townhouses because the damage Mark had done to the interior was so extensive that it was cheaper to destroy it than to fix it. That felt like a special kind of justice, because it meant that the house where Mark had committed his crimes and where Arthur had won his dirty victory would no longer exist. It was being wiped off the map just like Mark was being wiped out of my life. I finally had enough money for a down payment on a small but lovely condo in a different part of the city, where the sun actually seemed to shine a little bit brighter. On the day I signed the papers for my new home, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders that I had been carrying for nearly 2 years. I was standing in my new kitchen, which had clean white cabinets and a view of the water, and I realized that I had won in the end without having to lie or cheat or hurt anyone. I had simply waited for their own greed and their own bad behavior to catch up with them. I decided to do one last thing to put a bow on this entire situation, because I knew that Mark had left some of his personal belongings in a storage unit that was still in both of our names because it had been forgotten during the chaos of the divorce. I went to the storage unit, and I found boxes of his old clothes and some electronics and some expensive tools that he used to value so much. Most of it was already nasty and smelling of mold because he had stored it improperly, but I realized that there was some value in there that I could use. I sold everything in that storage unit to a liquidator, and I took the money and I donated every single penny of it to a local charity that helps children who have been victims of abuse. It felt like the perfect way to turn his nastiness into something good, and it felt like I was finally closing the door on that dark chapter of my life forever. A few weeks later, I was walking through a park when I saw Mark sitting on a bench looking disheveled and old and nothing like the confident man he used to be. He looked like someone who had lost everything, and he didn't even see me as I walked past him with my head held high and a smile on my face. I had my own home and my own life and a future that was bright and clear while he was living with the consequences of his own choices. His father Arthur had officially retired in disgrace and moved to a small town where nobody knew his name because he couldn't stand the looks he got in Seattle anymore. I realized then that justice does not always come in a courtroom, and it does not always happen as fast as we want it to happen, but it does eventually arrive. The house that I loved is gone, but I have realized that a house is just wood and nails, and the real home is the peace of mind I have now. I am paying off my last few bills, and I am looking forward to the holidays in my new place, where I will host my friends and fill the rooms with laughter and good memories. I learned that even when people use their power to crush you, you can still stand back up and find a way to win by being a better person than they could ever dream of being. I am 32 years old and my life is just beginning again, and this time I know exactly who I am and what I am worth. I am no longer the victim of a predator or the target of a corrupt lawyer, because I am a woman who survived the worst thing imaginable and came out stronger on the other side. My new condo has a small balcony where I can see the Space Needle and the lights of the city, and every night I stand out there and breathe in the fresh air, and thank the universe for giving me the strength to keep fighting. The debt is gone, and the house is gone, and the monsters are gone, and all that is left is me and the beautiful life I am building for myself. I am proud of the way I handled everything, and I am proud that I never stooped to their level even when it would have been easy to do so. I just kept moving forward, and I let their own momentum carry them right over the edge of the cliff they had built for themselves. I think about all the tips I got from people online, and I feel so much gratitude for the support I received when I was at my lowest point. It is funny how things work out, because if they had just been fair in the divorce, they probably would have been fine financially, but their greed was their undoing. They wanted everything, so they ended up with nothing while I was willing to start with nothing, and ended up with everything that actually matters. My life in Seattle is finally peaceful, and the rain doesn't feel like it is whispering secrets anymore, but rather like it is washing away the last of the grime from my past. I have a new garden on my balcony with little pots of herbs and flowers, and they are blooming even in the Seattle gray because they have been tended to with love and care. I am happy and I am free, and that is the best revenge I could ever ask for in this world. I sometimes wonder if Mark or Arthur ever think about me and the way they treated me, but then I realize that it does not matter what they think because they no longer have any power over me. I have blocked their numbers and deleted their photos and erased them from my heart as much as a person can. The only thing that remains of that time is the strength I found in myself and the knowledge that I can handle anything that life throws my way. I am looking forward to the future, and I am excited to see what the next 30 years of my life will bring, because I know that I am the one in control now. I have a good job and a beautiful home and friends who love me for who I am, and that is more than Mark or Arthur will ever have. The story of the house is over, and the story of my new life is just starting, and it is going to be a much better story than the one that came before it. I have learned that justice is a slow process, but it is a steady one, and if you stay true to yourself, you will eventually see the light at the end of the tunnel. I am sitting in my new living room right now watching the sunset over the mountains, and I feel a sense of calm that I haven't felt in a very long time. I am okay, and I am going to stay okay, because I have reclaimed my life and my happiness, and nobody can ever take that away from me again. The end of that marriage was the beginning of my freedom, and the loss of that house was the start of my true home. I am grateful for the lessons I learned even if they were painful, because they made me into the woman I am today. I am Leela, and I am a survivor, and I am a winner because I chose to be happy despite everything they did to stop me. My bank account is growing, and my heart is healing, and my spirit is unbroken, and that is the real victory in this long and winding journey. I can finally sleep through the night without worrying about what is behind the door or what is on a computer screen, because my life is clean and honest and full of light. I have come a long way from that scared woman in the parking lot with the thumb drive, and I am never going back to that place again. I have built a fortress of peace around myself, and I am the only one with the key to the front door. The townhouses that are being built where my old house stood will eventually be home to new families who have no idea about the darkness that used to live there, and that makes me happy too. It is like the earth is being purified, and the city is moving on just like I am. I am glad that I shared my story because it reminded me of how far I have come and how much I have to be thankful for today. I am going to make myself a cup of tea and sit on my balcony and watch the city lights come on one by one, and I am going to enjoy every single second of my beautiful and quiet life. Revenge is a dish best served cold, they say, but I think it is even better when it is served with a side of personal success and a big helping of peace. I don't need to see them suffer to know that I have won, because my joy is the only proof I need. I hope that anyone else who is going through a hard time can see my story and know that there is hope even when things look the darkest. You have to keep going, and you have to believe that things will get better because they usually do if you don't give up. I am proof that you can lose everything and still come out on top if you have the courage to keep walking forward. My name is Leela, and I am 32 years old, and I am exactly where I am supposed to be in this world. I am looking at my reflection in the window, and I see a woman who is strong and capable and beautiful, and that is a woman I am proud to be. The past is behind me, and the future is waiting, and I am ready for whatever comes next with a smile on my face and a light in my eyes. I am finally home, and it is the best feeling in the world. I remember the smell of the old house during the rainy season and how it always felt a little damp. But my new place is warm and dry and perfectly insulated against the world outside. I spent so many years worrying about Mark's moods and his father's expectations that I forgot how to just be myself, and now I am rediscovering all the things I love, like reading books until 3 in the morning and taking long walks by the water without having to check in with anyone. I have even started painting again, which is something I stopped doing when the stress of the marriage became too much to handle. My new condo has so much natural light that it is the perfect place for an art studio, and I have already filled one wall with my own creations. It is funny how much space you have in your brain for creativity when you aren't using all of your energy just to survive another day. I heard recently that Arthur had to sell his luxury car and is now driving an old sedan that makes a loud clicking noise when it starts, and I couldn't help but chuckle a little bit at the thought of that proud man having to deal with such a minor, but annoying inconvenience every single day. It is the little things that really get to people like him who used to think they were above the common struggles of everyday life. Mark is apparently living in a small apartment above a garage in a different part of the state where nobody knows his history yet, but I am sure his nature will catch up with him there too, because people like him never really change. They just find new places to hide until the truth finds them again. I am glad I am far away from all of that and that I have no connection to them whatsoever anymore. My life is my own, and it is a good life, and I am going to make sure it stays that way for as long as I live. I am grateful for the strength I found in the middle of the storm, and I am grateful for the quiet that has followed it. I am sitting here writing this, and I feel a deep sense of satisfaction that I have finally told the whole story from start to finish. It is a story of betrayal and loss, but it is also a story of resilience and triumph. I am the hero of my own story, and that is a title I worked hard to earn. I am going to close my laptop now and go for a walk in the crisp Seattle air, and I am going to breathe in the scent of the pine trees and the salt from the ocean, and I am going to be happy. I am Leela and I am free, and I am finally at peace with everything that has happened. The house is gone, but I am still here, and that is all that matters in the end. I am going to live a long and wonderful life, and I am going to make sure every day is filled with things that make me smile. I have learned that the best way to move on is to just keep living and to let the past stay where it belongs, which is behind you. I am looking forward to tomorrow, and the day after that, and all the days that will follow because they are mine to do with as I please. I am a woman who has found her voice and her power, and I am never going to let anyone take them away from me again. I am standing on my balcony now, and the city looks like a sea of diamonds in the dark, and I feel like I am exactly where I am meant to be. I am happy, and I am safe, and I am loved by the people who matter most, and that is the greatest revenge of all. I am going to enjoy my tea and my view and my peace for the rest of the night. Good night to the past and hello to the future, because I am ready for it, and it is going to be amazing. I am 32 years old and I live in Seattle, Washington, and I am the luckiest woman in the world because I have myself, and that is more than enough. The story of the pedo husband and the lost house has a happy ending after all, and that ending is my life today. I am content, and I am strong, and I am finally and completely free.